You wake in the quiet before the world begins, a moment so fragile that even the breath of morning feels heavy. The room is still, yet something inside you trembles, as if a truth has already risen before your mind can catch it. Your eyes drift across the space around you, and without a single word spoken, you feel it. The quiet disorder, the silent weight, the subtle ache of something left unattended not just in your home, but in your soul. A shirt abandoned on a chair does not simply rest there. It waits. A cup on the table does not simply sit. It remembers. The dust in the corners does not simply gather. It grows like an unanswered question. You tell yourself you will handle it later, but later becomes a shadow that returns again and again like a forgotten promise. And the truth you avoid is this: you are not avoiding the mess. You are avoiding yourself. Carl Jung once wrote that the outer world mirrors the inner world with an honesty we rarely dare to face. The house you live in is not just a place. It is a portrait of your psyche. Each object carries the echo of a feeling left unspoken. Each corner whispers a part of you waiting to be acknowledged. Look closer. The disorder is not chaos. It is communication. It is the way your unconscious speaks when words collapse. It is the map of emotions you never finished feeling. It is the landscape of thoughts you tried to outrun. Jung would say you are standing in the presence of your own unintegrated shadow, and yet, something in you knows. Something ancient. Something quiet. Something that rises like light behind your ribs. A beginning. Rebirth does not announce itself with fire. It arrives in a single breath, in a single decision, in the moment you choose to see what you once turned away from. Cleaning is not the task. Cleaning is the ritual. Cleaning is the dialogue between who you have been and who you are becoming. The first gesture is not about order, it is about awakening. So before this journey begins, pause. Place your hand gently on your chest. Feel the slow stirring beneath the surface. You are not here to fix a room. You are here to meet yourself, to peel back the layers, to listen to the silence, to understand the message written in dust and delay. This is not a video about cleaning. This is a descent into the psyche, a walk through the unconscious, a revelation of meaning hidden in plain sight. And when you emerge on the other side, the room will not be the only thing transformed. You will be too. There is a moment in every life when the home begins to speak louder than the mind, not with words, but with the quiet language of form, of objects scattered without intention, of corners left untouched, as if they hold secrets too heavy to disturb. In that stillness, something ancient awakens. The awareness that your home is not simply where you live, it is where your unconscious reveals itself. Jung believed that the psyche expresses truth in symbols long before it allows those truths to reach consciousness. Your room is one of those symbols. Each misplaced item becomes a silent messenger from the depths. The coat left on the chair carries yesterday's version of you, the one you have not fully released. The dishes in the sink hold the emotional residue of conversations you never finished processing. The dust in the corners whispers about time, about aging, about everything you avoid naming aloud. You might think you are living in your home, but in truth, you are walking through a psychological landscape you built without realizing it. Jung called this the projection of the unconscious into matter. The moment the inner world becomes too heavy to carry, it spills outward, arranging itself across surfaces, shelves, and floors like a map of your hidden self. Look at your environment without judgment. Imagine it as a dream you are waking inside. In dreams, nothing is random. Every detail is deliberate. The mind uses symbols instead of sentences. The same is true here. The clutter is not clutter. It is a pattern, a message, a mirror. When you stand in a messy room, you are standing in a conversation between the past and the present. The pile of clothes you keep meaning to fold is not procrastination. It is postponed identity, a part of you suspended between who you were and who you are becoming. The unmade bed is not disorder. It is the restless mind refusing to fully return to itself. The papers scattered on the table are not carelessness. They are unresolved decisions, thoughts still in transition, emotions waiting for integration. This is why some rooms feel heavy even when nothing has changed. The psyche recognizes the weight before the eyes do. Jung often wrote that symbols carry psychic energy. Disorder carries it too. You can sense it in the air, in the light that enters the room but does not settle, in the way your breath feels slightly tighter when you step inside. Yet this mirror does not accuse you. It invites you. It asks you to look beneath the surface and see the truth reflected back. Because everything you avoid cleaning is actually a doorway, a threshold, a place where your inner world asks to be witnessed rather than ignored. Your home holds your story, the visible and the invisible, the organized and the undone, the conscious and the forgotten. And when you learn to read this symbolic language, the room around you becomes more than a place to live. It becomes a teacher, a guide, a quiet companion on the road toward your own awakening. This is the beginning, the moment when you understand that the mess is not the enemy, it is the message. And when you learn to listen, transformation becomes possible. There comes a day when you stand in the middle of your own home and feel something deeper than discomfort, a quiet pull, a sensation that the disorder around you is not just physical, but psychological. This is the moment Jung would call the stirring of the shadow, not the darkness we fear, but the forgotten parts of ourselves asking to be seen. The shadow does not shout, it whispers. It hides in the corners you avoid sweeping, in the drawer you never open, in the objects you refuse to throw away. Each piece of clutter is an unprocessed emotion. Each chaotic space is a memory you have not finished living. The mess becomes a story your conscious mind has tried to forget, but your unconscious has carefully preserved. When you avoid cleaning, you are not avoiding dirt. You are avoiding confrontation. Because order demands honesty, a tidy space forces you to look at who you are without distractions. Chaos offers the opposite. It creates noise that keeps you from hearing the truth. Jung wrote that the shadow is everything you refuse to acknowledge about yourself. But it does not disappear. It reorganizes itself into behaviors, moods, objects, patterns. In this sense, your home becomes the canvas of your shadow, a physical expression of what the psyche has quietly buried. Look again at what you postpone. The laundry basket is more than fabric. It is the weight of decisions unmade. The pile of unread mail carries the fear of responsibilities you feel unprepared to face. The cluttered desk is the symbol of dreams deferred, ideas abandoned before they could be born. None of this is failure. It is unfinished conversation, and the shadow waits for the day you are ready to listen. The refusal to clean is also a refuge. Disorder creates a shield, a soft fog that protects you from clarity. Clarity is dangerous because it reveals the things you have tried to silence, the disappointment you carry, the exhaustion you ignore, the longing you do not dare admit, the loneliness that sits beneath your daily routine. Cleaning means stripping away the fog. It means seeing your life with clear eyes. And for many, that clarity feels unbearable. So you delay, you distract, you tell yourself it is not important. But the shadow does not punish you for waiting. It simply grows heavier, more present, more insistent, not out of malice, but out of love. Because the shadow is not against you, it is part of you, the part that wants to return home. The mess, then, is not chaos. It is communication. The unconscious does not use language. It uses symbols, dust, clutter, objects, repetition. It tries again and again to draw your attention to the places where healing is overdue. And when you finally notice, when you pause long enough to feel the heaviness not as shame but as signal, something shifts. The shadow steps forward, not to frighten you, but to reintroduce you to yourself. Because beneath the avoidance lies truth, beneath the disorder lies emotion, beneath the resistance lies longing. And the moment you are willing to see these hidden parts, the mess begins to change. Not because you have cleaned it, but because you have understood it. Stand still for a moment and look around your room, not with the practical eyes that see objects, but with the inner eyes that see meaning. Jung taught that the unconscious rarely speaks directly. It speaks through symbols, and your home is one of its clearest languages. Every corner of your living space reflects something you have not yet brought into awareness. The unconscious does not hide in dreams alone. It hides in the way your shoes stay by the door, in the stack of papers untouched for days, in the silent corners layered with dust. These are not accidents. They are invitations. They are physical metaphors for the places where your psyche is waiting for recognition. Imagine your home as a living mirror. What you see outside is the exact vibration of what moves within. When your mind feels scattered, objects scatter too. When your emotions stagnate, space becomes heavy. When your inner world begins to expand, you suddenly crave light, open windows, and movement. The outer world follows the rhythm of the inner world, whether you notice it or not. Jung believed that matter and psyche are not separate. They dance together in a phenomenon he called meaningful coincidence. What you call clutter, the psyche calls message. What you call procrastination, the psyche calls resistance. What you call a messy room, the psyche calls an unspoken truth waiting to be lived. It tries again and again to draw your attention to the places where healing is overdue. And when you finally notice, when you pause long enough to feel the heaviness not as shame but as signal, something shifts. The shadow steps forward, not to frighten you, but to reintroduce you to yourself. Because beneath the avoidance lies truth, beneath the disorder lies emotion, beneath the resistance lies longing. And the moment you are willing to see these hidden parts, the mess begins to change. A sudden burst of energy rises. You begin removing items, clearing surfaces, opening space. It feels instinctual, as if something inside you has awakened. That feeling is the unconscious signaling readiness for transformation. The body follows. When the house feels dark, you feel dark. When the space feels stagnant, your thoughts slow. When everything is piled and tangled, your inner world mirrors that same confusion. You are not reacting to the room. You are reacting to the symbolic story the room is telling. This is why cleaning can feel overwhelming. It is not the task itself, but the meaning behind the task. To clean is to confront old selves. To sort through objects is to sort through memory. To lift dust from corners is to lift forgotten emotions. The psyche knows the weight of ritual. It knows that moving things around also moves inner energy. The resistance you feel is not laziness. It is the fear of what might rise to the surface when silence returns. But here is the deeper truth Jung would offer. The psyche does not bring mess to punish you. It brings mess to reveal you. It wants you to see what you are ready to transform. Your home becomes the dream you walk inside while awake. And as with every dream, interpretation is the key. So ask yourself gently, what part of me is speaking through this space? What is this room trying to show me? What emotion sits beneath this object? When you approach your environment with curiosity rather than judgment, something miraculous happens. The mess stops feeling hostile. It begins to feel meaningful, and meaning is the first step toward healing. The home becomes a compass, a guide, a map of the soul waiting to be read. There comes a moment when the resistance breaks, not through force, but through a quiet inner shift. A small gesture, almost invisible, begins the transformation. You lift a cup, you fold a shirt, you sweep a corner. It is in these humble movements that the psyche begins to awaken. Cleaning is not a task. It is a ritual, a dialogue between your hands and your hidden self. Jung believed that every culture on earth carries ancient symbols of purification. Water, fire, air, rhythm. These symbols appear in sacred rituals, temples, and mythic stories because they reflect something universal in the human psyche. When you clean, you unconsciously participate in these ancient archetypes. The simple act of wiping a surface becomes an invocation. The movement of your hand becomes a mantra. The intention behind the action becomes a prayer. Notice what happens in your body as you begin. Your breath slows. The mind steadies. A subtle clarity appears, like light slipping into a forgotten room. You are not just rearranging objects. You are rearranging the inner landscape that those objects represent. Each gesture becomes alchemical. It changes matter and mind simultaneously. Cleaning has rhythm, a rhythm that speaks directly to the unconscious. The sound of a broom on the floor, the sweeping motion, the folding of fabric, the soft click of objects returning to their place. These motions carry symbolic resonance. They soothe the nervous system, calm the emotional body, and awaken presence. It is meditation disguised as movement. In Jungian terms, this is active imagination in motion. Instead of sitting with your eyes closed, you converse with the unconscious through your hands. The unconscious responds not with words, but with felt sense. A sudden release in the chest, a quiet shift behind the eyes, a small wave of relief. These are signals that inner knots are loosening. The resistance you felt earlier begins to melt. Emotions that were frozen start to flow. Thoughts that were tangled start to settle. You realize that the heaviness was not the mess itself, but the stagnation it carried. Movement breaks stagnation. Movement wakes the psyche. Even if the space is still messy, the moment you move with intention, something inside begins to breathe again. This is why people cry while cleaning without knowing why. It is the psyche melting into motion. The hands move, and the soul follows. Cleaning becomes a bridge between worlds, between the conscious and the unconscious. You are translating emotion into gesture, memory into movement, shadow into awareness. And here is the deeper miracle. You do not need to finish everything. The healing begins the moment you begin. Jung wrote that transformation does not demand perfection, it demands sincerity. One act of intention is enough to shift the entire field of the psyche. So when you clean with awareness, you are not fixing a room. You are participating in a sacred ritual. You are restoring dialogue between the seen and the unseen. You are inviting coherence into chaos. You are telling the unconscious, I am ready to face myself again. The room responds. The air changes. Light behaves differently. And for a moment, the world feels new. There is a turning point when the act of cleaning shifts from movement to meaning. It is subtle. You pick up an object you have avoided for months, and suddenly you feel something beneath the surface. A memory, a sensation, a version of yourself you have not spoken to in a long time. This is the moment when cleaning becomes alchemy, when matter begins to reveal the soul. Jung devoted much of his work to the ancient alchemists because he understood their true pursuit. They were not trying to turn metal into gold. They were trying to turn the self into something whole. In their furnaces, they projected their inner struggles, their fears, their hopes. Each stage of the alchemical process was a reflection of the psyche transforming itself from chaos to clarity. Decluttering is modern alchemy. The room becomes the furnace. Objects become symbols. Dust becomes the residue of forgotten experiences. And as you begin to release what no longer belongs, you are not clearing space. You are transmuting the emotional weight bound to those objects. Pick up the old letter you never read. Feel the heaviness in your hands. That weight is not paper. It is the emotional imprint it carries. Pick up the broken item you thought you would fix one day. The one day is not about the item. It is a quiet grief for the version of yourself who once believed in endless time. The drawer you never open is not clutter. It is a tomb where old selves lie sleeping. Alchemical work always begins with confrontation, not with fear, but with honesty. To declutter is to ask yourself, why am I holding on to this? What story does this object protect? What emotion does it keep sealed? Once you ask the question, the psyche begins to answer, not in words, but in feeling, an ache in the throat, a soft sadness, a burst of relief. This is the loosening of psychic residue. Then comes the release. When you let an object go, you are not discarding matter. You are releasing a version of yourself attached to that matter. The unconscious recognizes this instantly. It feels the shift as if a knot has been untied inside. Suddenly you can breathe more deeply. The air feels lighter. The mind feels clearer. Even the simplest gesture carries symbolic power. Placing one object in its rightful place. Letting go of something you no longer need. Allowing a space to breathe. These are not tasks. They are acts of psychic liberation. Acts that say, I am no longer clinging to what I once was. I am creating space for who I am becoming. In many cultures, the act of clearing space precedes every ritual. The ground must be purified before any sacred work can begin. Jung believed this mirrored the psyche. The unconscious cannot reveal new insight in a mind cluttered with old residue. You must clear before you can create. You must release before you can rise. Notice what happens after you let go. A silence appears. A new kind of silence. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of possibility. The psyche begins to expand into the space you have opened. Ideas appear. Inspiration returns. A sense of forward motion stirs. The home feels different because you feel different. This is the inner alchemy of decluttering. You are transforming from the inside out. You are turning chaos into coherence. You are turning heaviness into clarity. You are turning the forgotten into the forgiven. Your home becomes a temple, not because it is perfect, but because it is aligned with your becoming. The objects that remain carry intention. The space around them carries breath, and in that breath, you rediscover a deeper truth. You were not cleaning. You were awakening. There comes a moment on this journey when the home stops looking like a physical place and begins to look like a psychological mirror. Not the comforting kind, not the one that flatters or reassures, but the deeper mirror Jung called the shadow, the part of the self that holds everything you refuse to face, every untouched corner, every hidden pile, Every neglected space becomes a silent reflection of the emotions you have tried to outrun. The shadow does not speak with words. It speaks with disorder. It speaks through the tasks you delay, the rooms you avoid, the objects you pretend not to see. Jung said that what we reject does not disappear. It moves into the darkness of the psyche where it grows in silence. Your home captures this process with startling accuracy. The room you cannot bear to enter is the emotion you have not processed. The clutter you push into a closet is the memory you have pushed out of awareness. The layers of dust on the shelves are the layers of grief you never allowed yourself to feel. This is why cleaning can feel unbearable at times. You are not resisting the broom. You are resisting the truth. The psyche has a strange intelligence. It hides what we are not ready to face and reveals what we are prepared to transform. If your home is filled with unfinished tasks and abandoned objects, it is not because you lack discipline. It is because some part of your inner world is still in darkness, still waiting for light. That is the shadow calling. To confront the mess is to confront what the mess represents: the anger you swallowed, the sadness you postponed, the dreams you abandoned, the fears you inherited without ever questioning why. Cleaning becomes an initiation into this hidden territory. You touch an object and feel a rush of emotion. You clear a space and suddenly remember a truth you had forgotten. The shadow makes itself known in the simplest gestures. This is not punishment. It is guidance. The shadow reveals itself only when it trusts you are strong enough to look. When you can hold the discomfort long enough for insight to form. When you can sit with the silence without needing to run from it. Jung believed that the shadow is not the enemy. It is the neglected half of the soul waiting to be integrated. Your home shows you where the integration must begin. Look closely at the areas that stir the most resistance. The messy drawer you never open. The box of old things that makes your chest tighten. The stack of unfinished work that brings a quiet shame. These are not tasks to complete. These are messages, invitations. They show you where your healing is needed. When you finally meet the shadow with compassion, something shifts. The mess no longer feels like failure. It feels like communication, a dialogue between your conscious self and the parts that were left behind. As you clean, you are not forcing order. You are listening, and the shadow begins to soften. The energy of the room changes. The heaviness dissolves. The air feels less dense. You feel less fragmented. The unconscious stops pushing, stops protesting. It begins to trust you again, because you are no longer running from it. You are walking toward it. This is the real reason people cry when they clean. Not because the work is hard, but because the psyche feels seen. The shadow feels recognized. A reconciliation begins. Cleaning then becomes a sacred act, a ritual of integration, a reunion with the parts of the self you left in the dark. Each corner you reclaim becomes a corner of the soul returned to light. This is the purpose of confronting the shadow, not to judge it, not to erase it, but to bring it home. There is a moment in every transformation when the outer world begins to echo the inner shift. At first it is subtle. A breath feels different. A ray of light falls across the floor in a way that feels new. The silence does not accuse anymore. It welcomes. Something in you has crossed a threshold. This is the moment of rebirth. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind sung about in stories of heroes and miracles. It is quieter, gentler, almost shy in its arrival. It shows itself through simple clarity, through the way your hand moves with intention rather than avoidance, through the way your eyes soften when you look at your space instead of tightening with guilt. Rebirth begins the moment you choose awareness over habit. Jung believed that true renewal does not come from escape. It comes from returning to oneself with new eyes. Your home reflects that return. The clothes that once looked like burdens now look like choices. The surfaces that once felt heavy now feel ready. The corners that held fear now hold possibility. You are not the same person who stared at the disorder and felt overwhelmed. That version of you was carrying the unspoken weight of the past. The you standing here now has faced the shadow, listened to the silence, and welcomed the unconscious into dialogue. You have begun to move with awareness, and awareness is the birthplace of every transformation. Notice what has changed within you, not the furniture, not the objects, but the energy you bring to them. The hands that once hesitated now know their own intelligence. The breath that once felt shallow now feels grounded. The mind that once scattered itself across unfinished tasks now gathers itself in presence. This is integration. The psyche and the physical world begin to move in harmony. The room breathes. You breathe. Order is no longer something you chase. It is something you express. The home becomes an extension of your becoming, not a reminder of your resistance. Rebirth through order is not about creating perfection. It is about creating coherence, about coming into alignment with your own life, about choosing clarity over confusion, root over drift, presence over postponement. Cleaning is no longer a chore. It becomes a conversation with the future you are stepping into. With each movement of your hand, you declare something profound. I deserve clarity. I deserve peace. I deserve a space that matches the truth of who I am becoming. This declaration reshapes everything. The psyche responds. The body responds. Even the light in the room responds. The home becomes a sanctuary not because it is spotless, but because it is intentional. It holds you rather than hides you. It reflects you rather than overwhelms you. Jung wrote that the soul does not grow through avoidance. It grows through conscious participation in its own unfolding. You are participating now, actively, willingly, gracefully. This is rebirth made visible, and something else happens too. You begin to move differently through your life. Not only your room, decisions feel clearer, your breath feels lighter, your emotions feel less tangled. The inner fragmentation that once echoed through your environment begins to resolve. The unconscious no longer needs to shout through clutter. It can whisper through clarity. It can speak through order. It can guide you gently instead of urgently. You become more yourself, and the home becomes the temple of that becoming. The true meaning of this transformation is simple. Rebirth is not something you wait for. It is something you enact, one gesture at a time, one breath at a time, one conscious moment at a time, through order, through presence, through choosing to face what you once avoided. Your home reflects a truth now. You have returned to yourself. As you stand in the quiet of your renewed space, take a single breath and let it travel through you. Notice how the air no longer feels heavy. Notice how the silence no longer feels like a threat. Notice how your body no longer tenses at the thought of what still needs to be done. Something inside you has shifted. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. But it is real. You have not simply cleaned a room. You have rewritten a story. You have taken a space that once echoed your confusion and transformed it into a mirror of your clarity. You have walked through resistance. You have faced the parts of yourself that hid beneath dust and delay. You have brought order to a world that once felt overwhelming. And in doing so, you have touched something ancient and sacred within yourself. Jung believed that healing happens the moment the unconscious stops being ignored and begins being welcomed. That is what you have done here. With every gesture of care, every breath of awareness, every moment of intention, you invited your soul back into the world. And the world answered, through light, through space, through relief. This new order is not just in your home, it is in you. It radiates from the smallest movement, from the way you stand, from the way you breathe, from the way your inner world and outer world now speak the same language. Remember this. You deserve the clarity you have created. You deserve the peace you now feel rising within you. You deserve a life that reflects your truth rather than your shadows. If this journey resonated with you, let it continue. You are not alone in this process. Many are walking this same quiet path of awareness, healing, and rebirth. If you felt seen, if you felt understood, if you felt something awaken inside you, I invite you to stay. Like this video to affirm the transformation you have begun. Subscribe to join a community that values depth, clarity, and inner truth. Share this message with someone who may also be living in silent disorder, waiting for a spark of renewal. And before you leave, write in the comments, I choose clarity. Let that be your declaration, your beginning, your next step toward the self you are becoming. When you return to your space later today, pause for a moment. Look around. Feel the air. Let it remind you that transformation begins in quiet ways, through simple acts, in the smallest corners of your life. And when the dust gathers again, as it always will, you will know exactly what it is asking of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for choosing yourself.